Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today, the CMCA recertification process, keeping your CMCA up and your stress level down. My name is Karina May, and I am one of the webinar administrators here at CAMICB.
And my name is Laura Lozano, and I am the Credentialing Associate here at CAMICB. And before we get started with the webinar today, I just wanted to let everyone know that the presentation will last about 15 minutes. You can submit any questions you have throughout the presentation by using the tool on the control panel. You can also find a PDF copy of the presentation with hyperlinks. At the end of the program, we will answer as many questions as possible, and we will respond to any questions not answered during this webinar via email after the program.
All right, let's get started. What is recertification and why do we do it? Recertification is essentially the renewing of your CMCA. And there are a couple of reasons why we do this. First off, it allows managers to show that you are dedicated to your profession, to your employers, peers, and those living in community associations. It also shows managers allows them to stay current and continuously improve their knowledge base in an ever-changing environment. And lastly, it helps managers enhance their marketability and increase their earning potential. In fact, according to the most recent Foundation for Community Association Research salary survey, managers who earn the CMCA have an average 20% higher earning income potential than their non-credentialed peers. All right, and with that, let's talk about the deadlines. So managers are going to be placed either in an April 1 or an October 1 recertification cycle when they become certified. So if a manager passes their CMCA exam between January 1st to June 30th, they'll be placed in the April 1 cycle. If they pass their CMCA exam between July 1st and December 31st, they'll be placed in the October 1 recertification cycle. Now, in order to renew, managers will need to pay the annual non-refundable service fee of $135 by either April 1st or October 1st, depending on their renewal deadline date each year. And they must also recertify every 2 years. And we'll go into the process and what that entails just a bit later. But if you're ever confused about what your renewal dates are or what your status is, you can either go to camicb.org and select the Find a CMCA directory to look at your listing, or you can go to camicb.org and log in to look at your profile information by selecting the My Profile option in the upper right-hand corner. And here you'll see a screenshot of the Find a CMCA directory, which is going to be on the CAMICB website, and where you would search to find your name in the directory. We often get asked about what happens if a manager does not recertify by the deadline. So if a manager does not complete their renewal requirements by the deadline date, that means their CMCA will lapse and be terminated. So that means in order to regain their certification, they would have to complete the reinstatement process. All right, now let's move on to how to recertify. In order to recertify, managers need to earn and document 16 hours of continuing education every 2 years. They'll also need to continue to practice community association management. And the final process is going to be completing and submitting the recertification application by the renewal deadline date. You can either submit that application with the downloadable PDF, which was on the previous slide, or you can submit that via email, fax, or mail. Or as you can see here on the screen, you could submit this application online with the recertification application. I also wanted to note that CAMICB does not maintain a record of continuing education. It's the manager's responsibility to track their completed education and then report it on this recertification application we are talking about. What are the continuing education requirements for recertification? In order to recertify, managers need to complete 16 hours of continuing education earned within that 2-year recertification cycle. Or if they hold an active AMS or PCAM designation with CAI, the NAHRCM, and that stands for the National Association of Housing Cooperative Registered Cooperative Manager certification, or a Florida or Nevada CAM license. This will actually satisfy the 16-hour requirement. And you can use this in lieu of listing out 16 hours that you've completed during that 2-year renewal period. And as you can see here on the application, if you hold one of those qualifying certifications or licensures, you can complete this section instead of listing out 16 hours. The CAMICB Board of Commissioners has voted to eliminate the Florida license waiver for CMCA continuing education requirements effective December 31st, 2025, following the enactment of 2024 SB 382. SB 382 exempts Florida CAM license holders with over 10 years of licensure from completing continuing education. This conflicts with the CMCA's ongoing continuing education requirement, making it necessary to discontinue the waiver. Beginning January 1, 2026, all Florida CMCA credentials must complete 16 hours of approved continuing education to recertify. If you hold a Florida CAM license, you may continue to use it as a waiver for your October 1st, 2025 recertification. However, you must document 16 hours of continuing education when your next recertification application is due on April 1st, 2027 or October 1st, 2027. Courses approved by the Florida Department of Business and Professional Regulation for Community Association Manager licensing requirements will automatically be accepted for CMCA continuing education credit. Now we'll move on, and Laura, will you tell us about what counts as continuing education?
Continuing education credit hours must be either relevant to community association management or to your professional development as a manager. These credits must be approved either through CAMICB or it can also be approved by a state regulatory agency for manager licensing, which includes Florida, Georgia, Illinois, Nevada, and Virginia. So to recap, the options available for you to complete continuing education, you can look at our list of approved continuing education on our website. We have a list of all the different programs that we have approved that are available for managers to take. You also have the option to look at CAI headquarters or CAI chapters for continuing education programs. All of these are going to be approved, so you can also find them on the list of approved continuing education. You also have the option of completing any continuing education that your state has approved and use that towards your CMCA recertification. Or if you have completed coursework that has not been approved by CAMICB or a state regulatory agency, you can submit that information to CAMICB to be considered for approval. Any information that you would like to have considered, you can send it to info@camicb.org. And one question that we get a lot on the continuing education opportunities is where can managers find free or low-cost courses? And managers can find free or low-cost courses in our list of approved continuing education, where we list all continuing education programs that have been approved. So there are many providers who offer free or low-cost options, and you can search this in the directory with keywords like free or webinar. Okay, now let's move on to what does not count as continuing education. Any courses related to buying and selling of real estate are not acceptable as continuing education for CMCA renewal. Courses like this can be things like working with real estate investors or understanding investor strategies. These are examples of courses that we will not be able to accept as continuing education towards CMCA recertification. That being said, CMCA managers who hold a real estate license still can submit their continuing education they took for their license for approval, and we will approve education as long as it pertains to community association management or their professional development. But again, not any courses about buying and selling real estate. So for example, some topics of things that we could approve are things like fair housing, ADI compliance, ethics, and so on. Okay, so these are other options for earning continuing education hours that are available for managers. First, it's what we called in-house training. and this is limited to 8 hours of continuing education per renewal cycle. So in-house training is defined as education provided directly from your management company and employer. For example, a lunch and learn taught by a senior manager of your company will qualify as in-house training, but a lunch and learn hosted by your management company where a third party, such as a law firm, came in to teach on a topic, this will not be considered in-house training. And if you have any questions about what does and does not qualify as in-house training, you're always welcome to reach out to us at info@camicb.org for clarification. We also have the option of self-study credits, and this requires pre-approval by CAMICB in order to be authorized, and it is limited to no more than 4 continuing education credits per recertification cycle. Another option we have are teaching credits. If you're teaching a course, program, or event that has to do with continuing education, with community association management, or professional development, we can award you approval for teaching this program. You can earn 2 credits of continuing education per class hour the first time this course or program is taught, and then you will receive 1 continuing education credit hour per class hour when the same course is rethought. And then lastly, we also have authorship credits. If you have written any content that has to do with community association management, things like articles, blogs, novels, we can also award you continuing education credits based on the number of words that you have included in that content. So for example, if you had a published piece that was 500 to 1,000 words, we could give you 2 hours. 1,000 to 1,500 will be 3 hours, and then anything above 1,500 words will be, we could award you 4 credits. And if you complete a word that is more extensive, like a book or a journal, we can award you up to 10 hours based on individual analysis of that content. All right, and now why do managers have to respond to these questions on the application? CAMICB is a certification body, so this means that the CMCA is a credential signifying that CAMICB, an international credentialing body, identifies these managers as having demonstrated qualifying knowledge and integrity to practice in this industry. And as a certification body, it is then our responsibility to verify every 2 years that a CMCA has continued to uphold their knowledge and integrity with both continuing education and by abiding with the standards of professional conduct. We also do this because any violation of the CMCA standards of professional conduct may result in the revocation of the CMCA certification by CAMICB. All right, and on the last slide, here is a list of useful resources. So we have a number of useful links. And again, if you want to access any of these links, you can download the PDF handout of this presentation, which is available via your control panel and has all of the links embedded. So the first link that we have is to the CMCA Standards of Professional Conduct. If you ever want to check those out and refresh your knowledge on what those are, there's also the CMCA Handbook, and this goes over all of the policies that we have regarding continuing education. We also have the CMCA recertification application, and this is a link to the PDF application form if you want to download that and submit it by email, fax, or mail. We also have a couple of links to our social media and our other resources. So if you want, you can follow us on Facebook, where we post upcoming events and blog articles and other news related to community association management. We also have the CMCA Corner blog. We have all sorts of blogs and interesting articles related to hot topics between the community association management industry. And then lastly, we also invite you to follow us on LinkedIn. And this is a great resource, again, to look at our latest news and upcoming events with CAMICB, and it also gives you an opportunity to network with other CMCAs. All right, so I thank everyone for joining us today. Now, Karina, let's see if we have received any questions from our audience.
Sure, let's take a look here. I see a question from Jeff. Does the LCAM and PCAM coursework count towards CMCA continuing education?
Yeah, so as we mentioned on our webinar, if you hold an active CAM license from Florida or a PCAM designation, that will satisfy the 16-hour requirements. So basically, you don't need to go ahead and list out all of the 16 hours of continuing education. You can just simply, on the recertification application, confirm that you hold an active LCAM or PCAM designation and just move forward and pay for the service fee.
Thank you for that. I see one more question popped up from Danita. Can you repeat what you said about lawyer courses not counting?
Sure. So what I said about the courses that does not count as continuing education, it's any courses related to buying and selling of real estate. Those are the only ones that are not acceptable as continuing education.
And I think just to tag on to that, if there is any question whether or not something would count, you can always email us at info@camicb.org just to make sure if you are wondering before you take a course, just to make sure that you could get credit for that. All right, let's see here if we have any other questions. It looks like a couple more people have dropped off and I don't see any more questions. So this is just a reminder, if you have any additional questions, you can always email us at info@camicb.org. And before I close it out, Laura, do you have anything else to add?
No, I don't have anything else to add, but as you mentioned, please reach out to us at info@camicb.org if you have any questions related to the recertification of your CMCA.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon. Goodbye.